I want to tell you about the day I stopped being a fool. My name is Tyvellen Koss. I served 40 years in the Galactic Coalition Navy, rising through the ranks until they gave me an admiral's crest and a fleet of my own. I have fought in 9 major engagements. I have buried friends whose names would mean nothing to you. I have made decisions that cost lives, and decisions that saved them, and I have carried both kinds with equal weight. I tell you this so you understand that I am not a man given to fantasy. I deal in sensor readings, firing solutions, and cold mathematics. I always have. So when I tell you that everything I believed about the universe changed in a single afternoon, I need you to understand how deeply I meant every wrong thing I ever said before it. It started with a fairy tale. When I was a hatchling, barely old enough to hold my eyes open through a full light cycle, my broodmother used to tell me the story of the Pale Titan. Every Velhari child has heard some version of it. The details change depending on who tells it. The Dren people call the same story the Hollow Sun. The Mirathi call it the Sleeper's Blade. But every version agrees on the important parts. Long ago, there was a species called humans. They were clever, stubborn, and reckless. They discovered faster-than-light travel, spread to a handful of worlds, and then destroyed themselves in a civil war so terrible it swallowed their home star system whole. But before they died, the story says, they built one final ship. They poured everything they had left into it, every secret, every breakthrough, every last spark of genius, from a species that knew it was burning out, and they launched it into the black with a single standing order. Protect the weak. The ship would drift between the stars forever, the story says, silent and patient, appearing only when the helpless were about to die. A ghost, a guardian, a promise from a dead civilization to a galaxy that would never know their names. It is a beautiful story. I never believed a word of it. Humans are a footnote in galactic history, a minor species. Their ruins have been picked over by archaeologists and scrap traders for 3 centuries. Their technology, while sometimes surprisingly creative, was crude by any modern standard. The idea that they built something that still functions after all this time, something more powerful than anything the Coalition has ever produced, always struck me as the worst kind of wishful thinking. The galaxy is not kind enough to give us guardian angels. I know. I have seen what the galaxy gives us instead. It gives us the Zethari. The Zethari Dominion is an insectoid empire. And I use the word empire loosely, because empires usually want something. Territory, resources, influence. The Zethari want nothing except to consume. They strip worlds bare. Atmosphere, biomass, minerals, water. They take everything and leave behind a dead rock, then move on to the next one. They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They are, in the simplest terms I can offer, a swarm. And they had been pressing against Coalition borders for decades. The day everything changed, they stopped pressing. They pushed through. Their swarm fleet, over 4,000 warships, entered the Veshan corridor on a direct course for a small agricultural world called Talvin 6. I can tell you exactly what was on that world, because I looked it up before I agreed to defend it. 11 million civilians. Velhari farming families mostly. A large settlement of Dren refugees who had already fled one catastrophe. A quiet monastery of Mirathi monks who wanted nothing more than to be left alone with their prayers. No military bases. No weapons factories. No strategic value whatsoever. Just people. Coalition Command gave me 93 ships and honest orders. Delay the swarm. Evacuate who you can. Retreat before you are overwhelmed. They were not unkind about it. They simply told me the truth. The main fleet was being repositioned to defend the industrial core worlds. Talvin 6 was not a priority. I understood the mathematics. I had 6 hours before the swarm arrived. Our transports could evacuate roughly 2 million people in that time. The remaining 9 million would be consumed. I stood on the bridge of my flagship that evening and looked down at the planet through the forward observation port. The lights of the farming settlements glowed faintly against the dark side. Somewhere down there, families were eating dinner together, children were being put to bed, and none of them knew that I had already done the math on how many of them were going to die. I am not ashamed to tell you that I felt something very close to despair. Then my sensor officer spoke up. She reported an anomaly at the edge of the system. A single contact had appeared. Not from any known transit corridor. Not from a faster-than-light jump. Her instruments simply showed empty space one moment, and something there the next. No energy signature. No drive emissions. It was just suddenly present, the way a stone is present at the bottom of a river. It was enormous. She initially classified it as a rogue asteroid, but the geometry was too clean, too deliberate. It was moving under its own power, heading not toward my fleet, but toward the projected arrival point of the Sithari swarm. It did not respond to our hails. It broadcast no identification. I ordered a full scan. The results came back confused and contradictory, as though our sensors could not quite agree on what they were looking at. The object was roughly 18 kilometers long. Its hull was made of something our databases could not identify. Parts of it looked ancient. The surface was scarred and patched with mismatched materials, as though it had been repairing itself over centuries, using whatever it could find drifting through space. But beneath all that patchwork, the underlying architecture was unmistakable to anyone who had studied galactic history. My xenoarchaeology officer was the first to say it. She whispered the word like it might shatter if she spoke too loudly. Human. I will not pretend the bridge did not go very quiet. I will not pretend my own hearts did not skip. But I am a practical man, and practical men do not believe in fairy tales. I told my crew it was probably a derelict, a drifting wreck, caught in a gravity well, coincidence and nothing more. I ordered them to focus on the evacuation. Then the object spoke. Every speaker on every ship in my fleet carried the same transmission simultaneously. It came through on every frequency, in every language the coalition recognizes. The voice was artificial, calm, completely without emotion, and it spoke with an accent that no living being in the galaxy has used in 300 years. Civilian population detected, hostile fleet inbound. Engagement authorized. Please clear the corridor. Before any of us could respond, the Sithari arrived. 4,000 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and spread across the system like ink in water. I had seen Sithari fleets before. Never this large. My tactical officer, who has a gift for understatement, quietly informed me that our fleet would survive direct engagement for approximately 11 minutes. The human ship had positioned itself directly in the swarm's path. One vessel against 4,000. The leading wave, roughly 600 Sithari warships, opened fire without hesitation. I have watched the sensor recordings of what happened next over 100 times. I still do not fully understand it. The Sithari weapons struck the human vessel. Energy beams, kinetic rounds, biological acid projectors, everything the leading ships could throw, and nothing happened. The hull did not scorch. It did not buckle. Energy impacts seemed to vanish into the surface like rain into soil. Kinetic rounds shattered against it the way glass breaks against stone. Then it fired back. I struggle to describe the weapons even now. They were not beams or missiles or anything in our tactical vocabulary. Our science officers later theorized they were some form of directed spatial distortion, tiny, precisely targeted gravitational anomalies that simply erased whatever they touched. There were no explosions, no debris fields. The Sithari ships just stopped existing, replaced by brief flickers of light and then nothing at all. Empty space where a warship had been a moment before. In the first 60 seconds, the human ship destroyed 400 Sithari vessels. My bridge went completely silent. I heard someone drop a datapad on the deck behind me. Nobody moved to pick it up. The Sithari are not stupid creatures. Their hive admirals recognized the threat and adapted quickly. They split the swarm into smaller attack groups, tried to surround the human vessel, struck from every angle at once, attempted to overwhelm it through sheer numbers. The human ship adapted faster. Hatches opened along its hull, and hundreds of smaller craft poured out. Not fighters exactly. They moved too fast, changed direction too sharply, as though inertia meant nothing to them. They were unmanned. Every one of them carried scaled-down versions of the same impossible weapons. I watched a coordinated Sithari attack formation of 800 ships get taken apart in under 3 minutes. I wanted to use the word surgical, but surgery implies effort. This was something else entirely. The Sithari tried ramming. Ships that entered a certain radius of the human vessel simply stopped moving, held in place by something we could only describe as a gravitational web. Then they were pulled apart, Not with violence, but with a kind of terrible patience, molecule by molecule, until there was nothing left but a faint shimmer of dust. They concentrated the firepower of their heaviest dreadnoughts, 200 capital ships firing everything they had in a single coordinated barrage. My sensors detected a minor fluctuation in the human vessel's energy output. That was all. Then those 200 dreadnoughts were gone. One of my junior officers started laughing. Then he was crying. Then laughing again. Nobody told him to stop. I think several of us felt the same way. Midway through what I hesitate to call a battle, the human ship broadcast again. Same calm voice. Same complete absence of emotion. Coalition fleet, evacuation window is now extended. You have approximately 4 hours. Please prioritize juvenile and medical-dependent individuals. It was not speaking to us as an ally, not as a fellow military force. It was speaking to us the way a parent speaks to a child. Gently, patiently, with complete authority and complete kindness at the same time. It was protecting us, and it wanted to make sure we used the time it was buying wisely. That was the moment I understood. The fairy tale was true, every word of it. This ship had been out there for 300 years, drifting between stars, silent and watchful, waiting for exactly this kind of moment. The species that built it was dust. Their worlds were ruins. Their language was dead, but they had built something that kept their promise, and it was still keeping it, long after the last human hand had gone cold. I ordered full evacuation. Every transport, every shuttle, every cargo vessel with working life support was pressed into service. My warships powered down their weapons and began ferrying civilians off the surface. The engagement, if I must call it that, lasted just over 2 hours. Of the 4,000 Jathari warships that entered the Talvin system, not one survived. The largest military force the Dominion had ever assembled, the fleet that was supposed to crack open our inner worlds, ceased to exist entirely. The human vessel sustained no visible damage. When the last Sithari ship was gone, the vessel went quiet. Its smaller craft returned to their hangars. Its weapons powered down. It hung motionless in the void, surrounded by a thin haze of particles that had once been an armada. I hailed it. For a long time there was no answer. Then, finally, that same calm voice. Civilian population status? I told it the truth. All 11 million evacuated. No civilian casualties. There was a pause. Just a moment. Maybe I imagined it, but it felt almost like relief. Acknowledged, resuming patrol. And then it was gone. Not a flash of light. Not a jump to faster-than-light speed. It simply was not there anymore. The same way it had arrived. Our sensors swept the entire system. Nothing. That was 2 years ago. The Coalition has spent enormous resources trying to find the vessel again. We have failed. It does not appear on any sensor network, any patrol route, any deep space survey. But reports keep coming in. A Marathi colony ship, stranded in a nebula with failing life support, towed to safety by an unknown vessel that vanished afterward. A Dren refugee convoy, ambushed by raiders, saved when the attacking ships were simply erased. A research station caught in a solar flare, shielded by something vast that placed itself between the station and the star. Always the same pattern, always the same silence after. I think about the humans often now, a species everyone dismissed as a cautionary tale. Too aggressive, too divided, too self-destructive to matter. A species that tore itself apart in civil war and left nothing behind but wreckage. Except that is not true, is it? Because in their final hours, when they knew they were finished, they did not build a weapon of revenge. They did not build a monument to their own greatness. They built a protector. They aimed it at the future, at species they would never meet, at children who would never know their names. They said, in the only way they had left, that the galaxy mattered to them more than their own survival. I was wrong about the humans. We were all wrong. They were not a cautionary tale. They were a promise, and that promise is still out there, still keeping watch, still standing between the helpless and the dark, long after the ones who made it have turned to ash. I do not know what to call that. My broodmother would have called it a fairy tale. I think the humans had a better word for it. I think they called it duty.